Hi there, I'm Renos Vakis, lead economist at the World Bank, and your host for Accelerating Development Ideas for Impact. This is not your typical podcast. It's an AI powered conversation brought to you by the World Bank Institute for Economic Development, where we unpack the latest research with one goal in mind, turning big ideas into real world impact. Let's get started.
Thank you for the introduction, Reynos. Think about the last time you picked up an apple at the grocery store. You probably didn't think twice, you just saw fruit. But reading the 2025 World Development Report, Standards for Development, specifically the content on agricultural standards, made me realize how much is hidden in that moment. That apple isn't just food, it's the end result of a whole system of rules most of us never see.
Precisely, it is a bundle of invisible rules. In the report, they describe agricultural standards as the language of exchange for global food systems. These standards determine who gets to participate in trade and, frankly, under what conditions they participate.
That's a strong phrase, language of exchange. So we aren't just talking about taste here. What exactly are these standards covering?
It depends, but they can cover a lot of things. For example, the physical characteristics of an apple: size, color, shape. But it is also the labeling, the testing procedures, and safety limits. A major one is what we call maximum residue limits, or MRLs, which dictate how much pesticide can remain on a crop.
The technical stuff. It sounds modern, but I was surprised to see this goes way back. The report mentions the Chicago Board of Trade in the late 19th century.
It does. That was a turning point. They established uniform quality grades for grain. Before that, every sack of wheat was unique. After the standards, grain became a fungible commodity. You could trade it without seeing it. Then, fast forward to 1963, and the FAO and WHO formed the Codex Alimentarius Commission.
That's the big international body for food safety, right?
Correct. The goal was to harmonize testing and remove trade barriers. When many think of trade barriers, they think of tariffs, but we are no longer just dealing with tariffs. Tariffs have followed over the past decades. The real gatekeepers now are non tariff measures, or NTMs, which are often related to standard.
And the numbers on this are wild. The report says such non tariff measures affect nearly 90% of global trade.
Indeed, if you are an exporter trying to ship food or agricultural products, you now face an average of more than 15 distinct non tariff measures. That includes sanitary and phytosanitary measures. It is a dense web of compliance.
15 regulations, and that's just the government stuff. Here's the part that really surprised me: the spaghetti bowl of private standards. You've got standards set by NGOs and buyers, such as fair trade labels.
It's a proliferation. And often, these standards overlap significantly. Take coffee certifications. The report highlights that the criteria for major coffee certifications overlap by anywhere from 42 to 71%.
So they're asking for mostly the same thing.
Mostly the same things, yes, but here's the friction point. Producers often must pay for separate audits for each one. There's a textile manufacturer in Pakistan mentioned who reported spending about 5,000 US dollars annually for each of 15 different sustainability standards required by buyers.
$5,000 per standard. That's a salary for many people in that region.
It is a massive burden. In East Africa, for small and medium enterprises in sectors like coffee or cocoa, auditing expenses for a standard like Global GAP can range from $2,000 to $15,000.
And it's not just the audit fees, it's the cost of actually changing how you farm. There was that data point about Colombia.
Yes, the Nespresso AAA Sustainable Quality Program. Farmers there had to invest an additional $297 per hectare. Plus, they incurred an extra 11 cents per kilogram in operating costs just to meet those standards.
That is a steep hill to climb if you're a small farmer.
It is. And this leads us to a critical policy issue: regulatory distance. When trading partners have different standards, it restricts market access for developing countries.
Regulatory distance. Break that down for me.
Well, low and lower middle income countries typically align their safety limits, those MRLs we mentioned, with the international codex values. But high income countries often set stricter standards, sometimes to protect their own domestic producer.
So it's a non-tariff barrier. It's protectionism in disguise.
It can function that way. The data shows that firms in low income countries exporting food to the EU and US experience much higher product refusal rates at the border. And sometimes this divergence in standards has a real humanitarian cost.
I read that story about the World Food Program. It's heartbreaking.
It is a stark example. The WFP once had 12,500 metric tons of wheat flour rejected by a destination country. The reason? A few dead insects. Now, under international norms, this was permissible, but the local standards were different.
And the result?
A loss of 1.7 million US dollars. Food that was meant for aid wasted because of regulatory misalignment.
That really puts a price tag on bureaucracy. So, what's the fix? We can't just ask everyone to have the exact same laws overnight.
No, full harmonization is rare. The report suggests governments should pursue regulatory alignment. This means reducing discrepancies and building mutual recognition. Essentially, if I test it here, you accept the result there.
That sounds practical. But what about the small farmers we talked about? If you impose strict international standards on everyone at home, don't you risk pushing the little guys out of business?
You hit on a crucial point. In East Africa's food processing sector, only about 6% of SMEs have adopted strict international standards. It is too expensive. So the report proposes a framework called Adapt, Align, and Author.
Adapt, align, author. Okay, walk me through adapt.
Adapt is the early stage. For domestic markets, you shouldn't just copy paste global rules, you adapt them to local capacities. For instance, in Kenya, they created simplified requirements for the global GAP standard.
Like a stepping stone.
Exactly. It allowed smallholders to adopt good practices that were actually feasible, preparing them for full export compliance later. Then, as capacity grows, you move to align.
And align is where you start matching the big international rules.
Yes, to facilitate trade. This is where a country would aspire to fully align with maximum residue levels that are set globally, for example.
And then we get to author. This is the part I love because it flips the script, right?
It is about making them. Countries should participate in setting international standards for their own indigenous products. Look at Ethiopia. They are authoring standards for teff, their local grain. They are not just rule takers, they are rule makers.
That's empowering, but, and here's a reality check, writing a standard is one thing, proving you met it is another.
That is the quality infrastructure gap. Many standards are useless without the labs and auditors to verify them. The disparity is huge. Ethiopia has fewer than 100 accredited auditors for ISO standards. Germany, 12,000.
That is a massive gap. So if I'm an Ethiopian exporter, I might have the best product, but I can't prove it.
Precisely. That is the vicious cycle of low quality the report describes. Governments must invest in laboratories and testing centers because when you do have that infrastructure, the economic payoff is real.
Right, back to the Nespresso farmers in Colombia. We talked about the costs, but didn't they make more money too?
They did. Despite the costs, program farmers earned approximately $2.60 per kilogram. Their production costs were $1.33. That is a 10% increase in gross earnings compared to non-program farmers.
So it pays off. If you can get over that initial hurdle, the market rewards you.
It does, and that is the core message. Standards can be a barrier, yes, but if designed well, they can be a springboard.
It sounds like the goal is to stop treating standards as just red tape and start seeing them as infrastructure, like roads or bridges.
And that is why agri-food standards deserve a deeper look. They sit at the center of how food is produced, processed, distributed, and ultimately consumed, shaping everything from farm practices to what ends up on a plate. This conversation is really just the starting point. We'll be diving further into these questions with more podcasts and knowledge products exploring how agri-food standards affect livelihoods, markets, and food systems around the world. Over to you, Reynolds.
Thank you for joining us. You can find the full report on our website. Just follow the link in the description. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know about upcoming episodes. And before you go, how do you plan to put what you learn into practice? And what topics you'd like us to explore next? We'd love to know. Until then, goodbye.